Okay, so once upon a time, way back, there was this place called Wraeclast, right? It was basically a dumpster fire of epic proportions, and I'm here to tell you why. First off, there's Calandra, a mysterious woman with a deep passion for reflections, hence the coveted Mirror of Calandra, duh, who was basically the first being to exist in all of Wraeclast. We found her trapped in a lake, and to everyone's disappointment, found out she was a bird. Then we got some clay-loving and crystal-obsessed dudes with the world's first startup, aka the Primevals, like All and On, but they didn't last long because the Lightless, otherwise known as these Abyss guys, showed up and wiped them out by introducing them to the color green. Fast forward a bit and you've got a couple of different factions, the Asmeri and the Maraketh. They weren't doing so well in this Abyss-infested world, and well, the Maraketh decided to do something about it. They weren't quite strong enough on their own though, but thankfully the three sisters, Solarai, Lundara, and some chick with a veil called Viridi gave them a hand and pushed the Lightless back underground. Yeah, Solarai and Lundara are pretty much Solaris and Lunaris as we know them. The three sisters would also go on to create the Wildwood, a safe space for the Asmeri people to hide out in while all this crazy shit was going down. Shortly after that, a woman gave birth to two twin boys, Sin and Innocence. Legend has it that Innocence was basically a goody two-shoes and Sin was kind of a dick, and ultimately Sin was burned at the stake for stealing bread or something. While he was roasting over an open fire, Sin turned to ash, which went freaking all over everybody watching, and they all lost their minds and turned on one another. Innocence, desperately wanting to become a godly being, used this opportunity and chaos to get a bunch of subscribers over in Oriath, a big island off of Wraeclast coast, and grow his following there, and eventually succeeded and became a god, at the cost of Sin also being promoted to a divine being. Also, turns out none of that legend necessarily really happened and might have just been propaganda posters Innocence put up in order to reach his goal of godhood. Not so innocent after all, are we? Anyways, Sin was rightfully pissed and planted a superpowered seed called the Dark Ember underground that basically turned everything into a monster-infested nightmare. This was the creation of the Beast, and all of PoE's thaumaturgical magic as we know it. Also, the Beast managed to put all of the other gods in Wraeclast into sleep mode somehow. Don't ask. Enter the Val, a bunch of people completely obsessed with living forever. Basically like this guy. They discovered these little beautifully colored rocks called virtue gems. Yeah, the same ones we use to avoid ever having to use a default attack in-game. While we are sophisticated and smart and socket our gems inside of our gear and all that, the Val, well, let's just say they were a little bit more daring and would just shoot that rock dust straight into their veins. Queen Aziri of the Val really wanted to stay beautiful forever and ordered Doriani, her mad scientist, to figure it out for her. Classic delegation. He screwed up big time though, potentially causing a cataclysm that more or less destroyed their entire civilization. Good times. Remember the Asmeri hiding out in the Wildwoods from earlier? Yeah, now that the Val are practically wiped from existence, they decided now would be a good time to claim the Iron Throne for themselves. They rebrand as the Eternals, terrible movie by the way, and go on to create Sarn, a giant city that you can find over in Act 3. Many years pass and the Emperor Izaro of the Eternal Empire has an unfortunate case of impotency and decides to open up a giant labyrinth full of traps and dead ends as a way of figuring out who to give the keys to his kingdom to after he dies. Kaitis, a young upstart from the sickeningly rich Perandus family, completes the labyrinth and becomes the next emperor. He hires a dude called Malachi to be his advisor, and well, that doesn't go terribly well, since Malachi is kind of insane and wants to follow in Doriani's footsteps with the whole wanting to see just how far he can take these little virtue gems. Well, all in all, the Eternals were actually giant assholes and enslaved people and all that, so a group of rebels, led by High Templar Vol and a bunch of other historically important figures like the Ezamites Rigwald and Karui's King Combe, went ahead and basically took over the Eternal Empire by beating them up. Also, side note, during this rebellion, Combe killed a ton of Eternal higher-ups and attached their skulls to his belt, creating our beloved Headhunter. What a freaking legend. Unfortunately, one bad apple survived, Malachi. He's still around and somehow manages to convince the newly self-appointed Emperor Vol that he was a good fit for the task of destroying the Beast and with it thaumaturgical magic in all of Wraeclast. Turns out, big surprise, he was lying and he just wanted to steal the Beast's power for himself. This led to another cataclysm which ultimately destroyed the Eternal Empire once and for all. And yeah, that's more or less where you come in, an exile cast off from Oriath by High Templar Dominus. You're basically the universe's designated cleanup crew, tasked with cleaning up after everybody else's messes in the flashiest way possible. So, there you have it. That's exactly everything you'll ever need to know about Path of Exile's lore. I'm glad I could be of help.
Well, actually,